British welcome thee to the quest of the Avatar. Thou shalt guide our people into the new age of enlightenment.
We've had 2 Wizardry games, so I guess the other major Western RPG franchise needs to catch up. Following up the Famicom port of Ultima 3, here's their port of Quest of the Avatar. And while you may look at this Famicom port and think it's just a copy of Dragon Quest, this is one of the foundational games. You'll be hard-pressed to find an RPG that doesn't owe a huge debt to Quest of the Avatar. The story of Ultima 4 really begins with the box for Ultima 3. The demon on that cover got a parent wrapped up in the satanic panic of the early 80s to send series creator Richard Garriott a nasty letter about how he was corrupting the youth of the world. That led Garriott to ask the question, what were his games teaching people? What did it mean when killing an entire town of people was not only acceptable, but a vital strategy in his games? And so Ultima 4 upended a lot of the traditional RPG conventions. Your goal wasn't to defeat some great evil that was going to take over the world. It was to provide a spiritual beacon, a guiding example of self-improvement. Ultima 4's moral system is based around the concept of 8 virtues: honesty, compassion, valor, justice, honor, sacrifice, spirituality, and humility. Yes, I did that off the top of my head. Your actual goal in the game is to practice those 8 virtues, as well as level up your characters, until you're ready to descend through a final dungeon and retrieve a holy book. Every virtue has a character class associated with it, and there's also a town associated with each virtue. At the start of the game, you're given a bit of a personality quiz. You're presented with a series of moral dilemmas that require that you pick one virtue above another. Which virtue winds up being most important to you determines your starting class and location. The other 7 virtues all have party members associated with them, and those party members are all hanging out in their own towns. So your first goal when you set out, before anything else, is to go find more people to join your party. And here's where we start getting into the differences between the original Ultima 4 Quest of the Avatar and the Famicom's Ultima Seisha no Michi. In the Famicom version, you can only have 3 companions with you at once. All of the other companions head to an inn, and you'll have to travel there if you want to switch them out. Another big difference for the console version is that they greatly simplified spellcasting. Probably for the better in this case, since it was always a bit complicated in Ultima. Here you automatically have your list of spells, and casting each of them requires a certain mixture of herbs. You'll have to purchase more of those herbs to keep yourself going. Since each spell requires a different mix, you might find yourself unable to cast any more of a particular spell while still being able to use another one. Everything also has a magic point cost, but magic points quickly recover as you walk around. The other giant change from the original is that the conversations have been streamlined so that people just say one line and that's it. The characters in the original Ultima 4 had conversation trees. Since the goal of the game is to strengthen your virtue, you might be wondering how you're supposed to do that. Unfortunately, that aspect of the game is a bit mechanically rote, and in many cases you just repeat the same action over and over again until you've maxed out that stat. How you know your stats, and increase your spirituality, is by going to the castle of Lord British and speaking with this gentleman who will let you know if you've done enough. Honesty is earned by paying merchants what they ask for, while you earn compassion by giving money to beggars. Valor is gained by defeating enemies and not running away, while justice is earned by allowing your enemies to flee. You earn sacrifice by donating blood to hospitals, and honor is increased by exploring dungeons. The only way to earn humility is by being humble when someone asks you a question. Besides those tasks, you also need to learn the mantra for each virtue, and recite those at each shrine in order to obtain a runestone. And there's other small quests to perform throughout the world. Ultima is very much an open-world game. You go anywhere, do what you want, in just about any order. Initially, you'll need to use moon gates to get around. especially to some of the cities that are isolated. These are portals that will appear at certain spots on the map when the moons are in the correct phase. Another place for you to explore are the dungeons, but you really don't want to go into them until you've leveled up a lot. The dungeons are played out from a first-person view, and the enemies within them are extremely strong, so don't expect to be able to explore them for a long time. Combat plays out on this tactical map, and on every turn you can move, target someone, or cast a spell. The most useful option is the first one, Auto. It will generally pick out an advantageous move for you, and while you may not want to run the whole combat automatically, using it to handle things like movement or attacking people next to you speeds up that menuing in combat. Defeating all of the enemies leaves a treasure chest behind, and you'll have to search that space to collect what's in it. It's always possible that it could be trapped. As you're walking around the world, beware of swamps. You'll get poisoned if you walk on those, and then you'll have to use either a cure spell or go to a hospital. As you're walking around, hitting the A button brings up a menu similar to Dragon Quest, though there is one significant command you might not have seen before. You can choose to attack people. You don't want to, of course, since that would harm your virtue, but the option is there for you. Ultima Seisha and Michi proved to be very popular. There were even a series of comics that spun out of it. However, for some weird reason, the Famicom never got a version of Ultima 5. The Super Famicom ports of other Ultima games were released in Japan, but for consoles, Ultima 5 remained a North American exclusive. I've really only scratched the surface of Ultima 4 here. I could go on for a long time about it, but I also realized that I wouldn't be providing a whole lot of information by doing so. Is this version of Ultima worth playing? Maybe. While I think that the computer version's a bit better, it also has a pretty significant barrier of entry. The interface for the computer versions is pretty terrible. However, in terms of streamlined Ultima 4, I think the Master System version's actually the better one. It retains just a bit more of the original's flavor. And regardless of which version you play, Ultima 4 is not the most streamlined of games. Being this open-ended means that you'll spend a lot of time wandering around without much idea of what you're supposed to do. While this is a historically significant game, it's also one that's a bit tough to get into.